Hello, my name is Roy and I'm here to show you how to unbox, set up, and operate the LK Digital Imaging System by Visionary Digital. Before we start, I wanted to get into one little preface on this computer. This is the PC workstation that's built for your system. It is an extremely fast, very efficient, overclocked workstation. There are a couple of important key things that we need to get into before we start with the setup of the system. One is this is a hybrid cooling system. It uses a radiator and fans, a liquid radiator and fans. It cools the CPU and the GPU. Essentially, it's a positive pressure airflow case. There are twin 140 millimeter fans on the top, and twin fans 140 in the front, and a single 120 exhausting out the back. What this does is it creates a positive air pressure in the case so that all these little vent holes around the case are actually exhausting air rather than sucking it in. The only air allowed to come into the case are through filtered openings. Let me show you. This gets into the care and maintenance of this case. I'm going to prop this up so you can get a better view of the front. Okay. The top of the case has a magnetically attached wire screen mesh that can be taken off and washed. Here are the twin 140 millimeter Noctua fans. All the fans on this machine are controlled by the motherboard. There's a curve that I wrote for this so that it keeps the fans quiet under normal operation. They'll only kick up when the machine is being throttled. Coming around to the front, it is also filtered and easily removable. It has a panel on the front that pops off. This screen mesh again can be washed. You simply want to make sure that when you connect these back up, you line up the pins in the bottom and then press the two tabs on top, locking the front panel in. I'll get into the detail of the case later. Optical drive, card reader, and USB ports. Basically, underneath, you have a screen mesh that, again, filters all the air coming in through the bottom. It's held in by little magnetic retention points. You simply slide it in and let it come up. It pops in real easy. The case comes off with two thumb screws. The side case does. The window. So now you can access any material you need to get to inside. Briefly, I want to let you know this is a clone drive switch, and this is here in the unlikely event of a catastrophic hard drive failure. You click on the clone drive switch and you've got immediately an exact copy of your hard drive to boot from. All of your programs, all of your settings are just as they were on your main drive. It just gives you a fail-safe. That's about it for now. We'll get into more detail of what's inside the case later, but I just wanted to go over basic maintenance. Do not block the intake ports or exhaust ports of this workstation. Don't place books and things on top of the case blocking air flowing in. You'll choke it, and that's not good. This thing is overclocked to 4.6 gigahertz. It needs to be able to cool itself down. That's it. Hi, it's Roy. I'm going to walk you through the basic unboxing and assembly of this modified CS21 copy stand. This will give you a solid platform to mount your camera and your rail, electronic rail, so that you can stack. This is really easy. When you get this, it's basically going to come in two separate components, the base plate and the rail with head. You'll get a bag of hardware and a handle. Inside the bag of hardware, you'll have a wrench. You'll have a little tiny hex wrench, a screwdriver, Phillips, a level. You'll have 5 of these screws with washers and 1 small machine screw. This is for attaching your handle. I'm going to walk you through this. It's really simple. I'm going to slide this over. Now, I'm leaving a little bit of room on the edge of my table so I can come underneath here and actually attach the hardware. On the bottom of the railhead, there are 3 screws on the front and 2 screws on the back, and they correspond to the holes in the baseboard. It's pretty simple. You just simply set this on top of the screw holes, like so. And now I'm going to take the screws that I have here, and I'm going to insert them from underneath and get them started into the threaded nuts on the rail head. Now when you're doing this, be mindful not to strip anything out or force anything. These should go in really easily. And what you want to do is you want to just get them started by hand. You don't want to tighten one down and then go after the rest of them. You want to put them all in and leave them loose. That way the rail can move and all the other bolts can center themselves where they need to be. Now, they go in really easily. There's no need at all to force these. Now, once you get them in, you can tighten them up by turning the screwdriver. Now, the screwdriver has a right angle on it, which gives you plenty of leverage to get in here and tighten things down. As you can see, the screws are coming through. And there we go. That's it. That's all there is to it. Now, I'm going to put the handle on. I'm going to grab my screw, I'll put it through the handle. The handle can only go on one way, and you'll see it. It's got a keyway. So as you rotate the handle onto the shaft, it's going to have resistance, and then all of a sudden it's going to go in. That way you know it's in the right spot. So you put the handle in, you snug it down. You don't have to over tighten it. That's all there is to it. There are some other adjustments on this. It's heavy. You can adjust the amount of tension on the return spring with these 3 screws using the tiny hex wrench. You can also adjust the angle of this head with this adjustment in the back here. That can be done with a screwdriver and a wrench, raising and lowering this platform. It's going to arrive to you preset. The load is going to be preset and the angle is going to be preset, so you really don't have to do anything with this. There's more information in your manual that details exactly how to set this up. Now, this is what it looks like once it's all set up and running. You have a release lever here, and you have the crank here that will raise and lower the head. Once you get it in position, you lock it in. Now currently, this head is loaded with a spring so that it wants to run back up because we don't have a camera. Once the camera's on there, it's about equal tension up and down, so it's like it's floating. It's a wonderful thing. This will give you your solid base for your work, and the second video on this I'll get into how it's wired and how to connect the camera. I'm now going to cover the wiring for the camera and the electronic rail that are incorporated into the copy stand. I have built a wiring harness for the copy stand so that you don't have to. This will come pre-assembled and connected so that basically all you're going to have to do is connect the camera and the electronic rail. And I'll go through these connections before we start. On the right side, when you're looking at the rail, you have 3 connections. One of them is the USB 3.0 Canon cable with the Canon strain relief. Now, this is very important because it is a delicate part of the camera in that you don't want to be twisting the USB cable in any way, shape, manner, or form. You'll damage the camera. So this, we'll get into detailing how this connects in a minute. You'll also have, this is a flash sync cable. This connects to your power pack, and it allows the camera to communicate with the studio flash pack so that every time the shutter releases, the flash fires. And speaking of shutter releases, this is the shutter release. This will connect to the rail controller, and this will fire the camera at the correct time to create your stack. Very simple. On the left side, we have the power supply, which is going to replace the battery. This has to be put into the camera in a very specific way, which we'll detail in a moment. And this is the connection for the electronic rail. Again, it is also secured to the copy stand with strain reliefs on both sides. These are stainless steel insulated strain reliefs, so you don't have to remove them. And they're wire tied across the back. We'll get into the connections at the computer and at the controller as we move along. All right, the first bit of hardware we're going to attach to this copy stand is going to be the electronic rail. It has basically 3 different points that you can mount to. We're going to choose the one in the middle. There's a captured bolt with a knob on the back here. Very simply, you position the rail up against the bolt and tighten. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Just like screwing in a light bulb, real easy. Now, you can put the level on top and you can adjust it accordingly and then tighten it down. It's got a really nice big knob on the back so that you can get a lot of torque on it and really get it nice and tight. That's basically it. Now we're going to have to wire it. Now to wire this, here's your connection point. You can only go in one way. It's actually a key weight here. So you rotate it in, lock it in position, and that's it. Now you've got a nice strain relief here. It's got wire ties on both sides. It's rubber insulated and stainless steel. So you really don't have to do anything with this. Once it's in, it's in. Leave it be. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start working with the camera. All right, now we're up to mounting the camera. When you get your camera, you're going to want to put on this plate on the back. You can simply use a coin. The plate looks like this. It has a sliding 1/4-20 screw. I like to mount the plate so that it's normal with the center of the lens. Once it's on, it's tight, you're ready to start mounting the camera. The first thing you need to do is put the power supply in. Now, when you open the camera on the power supply, let me point this. There's a little rubber flap right here. It's critical that this rubber flap be open and allowing the wire to go through. So when you put your power supply into the camera, let me show you one thing here. This power supply also has a capture on the wire so that the wire comes in, it goes underneath, and it's locked in. That is absolutely critical. If it's not locked in, the battery door will not close and the camera will not turn on. So based on this, we can go ahead and we can say, we're going to take our power supply, we're going to just press it into the camera like that. You see the wire is now coming through the hole in the camera, and the rubber flap is out of the way. Now the battery door closes and it's set. Now we can go ahead and mount the camera. Now to mount the camera, you simply line up the little teeth on the bottom and squeeze it. It locks it in place. That's it. It's a quick release. To open it up, you simply pull this one notch and then press the button and it comes off. You have to press that button to get the camera off. It's a fail-safe. Now to put the camera back on, I'll demonstrate with an empty plate. You see how you have the teeth on the bottom? It lines up and you press it in place. That's it. To get it off, it's here and you press and that's it. So to put our camera on, we lock it in. That's it. This time we're going to connect the wires that we connected to the camera and the rail to their corresponding components. The first thing we're going to do is the rail controller here, the StackShot controller. We're going to connect the cable that went from the rail. It goes to the controller. That's easy. The power supply to the camera will get plugged into a plug strip here. This plug strip is a universal plug strip. It'll handle any plug, European, Asian, American. It's CE approved. It plugs into your local mains. It has a European plug on the other end. So you'll have that set up. Any plug can go in here. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add power to the controller. So we plug in a little power brick, and it gets plugged in. We're also going to connect a USB cable to this controller so that we can communicate with it with our software. This is going to go to any USB 2.0 port on the computer. And lastly, in the other harness we have here, we have the big USB 3 cable. That's going to connect to the computer, and that's going to talk to the camera. We have this is the other end of the flash sync cord that we put in our camera. This is going to go to our flash power pack, which we'll get into later. And this cable actually is going to connect to the controller where it says trigger, and that's going to actually fire the trigger. Now we're going to make everything nice and neat. We'll tuck everything away back here, but that's where the wires go, and that's basically it. Now when I turn power onto this, it goes on, lights up, it's ready to go. That's it. That's all there is to it for the camera controller and the rail controller and the wiring. Okay, one of the things we have to talk about is the transformer for this power pack. This power pack operates on 110 volts only. So this transformer will plug into your mains, which is 240 volts, and deliver 110 volts. It's a bit overbuilt. It's a 5,000 watt unit, so there's plenty of power. There's an adapter on the end of this cord that is made especially for this unit. It's very tight and it is very high powered. So this will plug into your current in the wall because it's grounded. And on the back of this unit, there's a switch. When you turn that on, you'll see the red light go on. And these are where you're going to plug in the power pack. Either one of these, not this one. This is for 240 volts. 9. Not this one. Only these. So at this point, you can plug in this and it connects to your power pack, and you'll have reliable, dependable power. We have these all over the world. They're working well. These things draw very little relative to this. This is 5 times more than we need to run this pack. They're CE approved, and yeah, it should be very easy. So this, by the way, will not be plugged into the plug strip. This gets plugged into a separate circuit in the mains, preferably one that is not connected onto that plug strip. This should have its own power supply, not connected to the computer, not connected to the camera. This should be independent because this draws the most power of anything. That's it. When you unbox this, it'll look just like this. As a matter of fact, I'm going to leave this green tape on here so you don't accidentally plug one in there. In the back here, this input switch will be switched to 230, which is what you have on your mains. It will connect, plug right in, it will deliver 110, which is what powers this. Everything else is auto switching, 110, 240, it doesn't care. So this is the only thing that requires 110. So there's a power supply. That's it. Okay, now I'm going to be detailing setting up the flash heads with the flexible arms, the barn doors, and the clamps. Essentially, you're going to need 4 things. You're going to need your flash head. You're going to need a friction arm. You're going to need a super clamp, and you're going to need the barn doors. Once you take the flash head out of the box, it's going to look like this. You take the cover off, you've got the flash tube and the modeling lamp. First thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to mount the clamp onto your table. Now the clamp opens and closes here. You have an insert here. If you wanted to put this on scaffolding or piping, you could take that out. Leave it in for the table. It has a screw that will secure your friction arm, and it has a release mechanism here that will allow the friction arm to come in and come out. So first thing we're going to do is put it up to the table, and we're just going to lock it in position like so. It's really strong. It bites really well. That's all there is to a clamp. Now on the friction arms, when you open the box, you're going to see the knob is separate. The friction arm has a plastic keeper right here that holds the washers in place. You need to remove that little keeper and discard it. And then you can put the knob on. Don't try and put the knob on with the keeper on there because it won't work. Okay. Now, what you want to do is on these arms, there's a flat spot. And what you want to do is you want to have that flat spot pointing towards this bolt so that when you push this in and release the button, that lets the arm down into the socket. You tighten the bolt up against the flat spot, and that will prevent the arm from ever moving. When you tighten this knob, this tightens this joint, and this joint all at the same time. When you loosen the knob, everything becomes loose. They're really handy to move things around this way. So I'm going to lock this back into position. Here's my flat spot on this piece. Now to place my flash head on here, when you take the flash head out of the box, you'll see that this is folded back. You need to release it. To release it, you just turn this lever. Now this lever has a clutch in it. So when you pull it out, it's neutral. When you let it in, it's biting. It's grabbing that nut. So you want to get this kind of straight and then move your handle out of the way. Now again, it's the same premise as down here. I want to be able to put the screw on the flat spot. So I put my flash head over, tighten the screw down to the flat spot, and we're done. Now, I'm going to point out something here. This has a ridge here and a ridge here. When you have this down and you tighten it up, if you loosen it, you still can't take it off because it's captured by that ridge. That's a safety feature, so that if you loosen this, the head can't fall off. Now I'm going to describe a little bit about the flash tube and the flash head itself. This is the flash tube, and this is the modeling lamp. The modeling lamp is a 250 watt halogen lamp that will remain on all the time. The flash tube will give you that brilliant flash, but only for about a 6,000th of a second. Don't touch these with your fingers. The oil from your hands can really cause a problem. If you have to remove these, the modeling lamp, put a plastic bag over it or use a cotton glove. The next step is going to be to mount the barn doors. The barn doors are light modifiers. You've probably seen them on Hollywood studio lights. The way these work, when you get them, they're going to be folded up. You unfold them. You slide the barn doors open, like so. Now on these side panels, you rotate them 180 degrees, and it will form a square, a rectangle, like so. Same with this side. You do this once, you're never going to have to do it again. This is just basically folded up for packaging. Now, the barn doors themselves have a slot on all four of the sides. The flash head has an extruded ring that goes all the way around it, and that's what's going to capture the barn doors in place. So it's very simple. The barn doors simply go over the flash head, and you press them down gently. They'll be able to rotate in any direction you need them. That's it. The barn doors are now on. So if I want to regulate my light onto my subject this way, I can open my sides and I can run my barn doors in to create a slit. If I want the slit going the other way, I can simply rotate it. They're an indispensable light modifier, and I'll get into more detail when we start imaging. But this is how you need to set up both of your flash heads. Now, I've set up one here, I'll set up the other one, and then we'll get into hooking it up to the power pack and actually using it. That's it for now. This video will be an introduction to the operation of this Dynalite 800 watt second Xenon Flash power pack. Why do we use Xenon Flash? Xenon Flash is the most controllable and consistent light source possible for professional photography. Also, at short duration means that vibration is mitigated. So for macro, this is the perfect light source for us. To get started with, the Power Pack has the capability of handling 4 flash heads. We're not going to deal with that. We're only dealing with 2, one on the left and one on the right. It has 2 banks, bank A and bank B. We're going to attach the left cable onto bank A. Now, the cable has a little mark on it, a little white dot and a line. You want that pointing away from you, and it'll go into the socket. And we're going to put the right flash head, the right side flash head, on channel B, and that's it. The power, each head is independently controlled, bank A, bank B. This is the power switch. The next thing you want to do is turn the pack on. So when you turn the pack on, you'll see the ready light indicates that the flash is fully charged and ready to go. This is a capacitor discharge pack. There are capacitors inside that fill up with a charge, and when you fire the flash, it dispenses the charge. Out it goes. So that being said, let's get on to the modeling lamps. Now, these these 2 switches control the modeling lamps. If I turn on my right side, my right modeling lamp goes on. If I turn on my left side, my left modeling lamp goes on. They're adjustable as well, so you don't have to go full on bright. You can go adjust it to whatever degree is good for you, depending on the light in your room. If you should be shooting with your room lights off or very, very low, in which case you don't need the modeling lights on full bright. You can tune them down like that. Now, if we zoom into the subject, I'll show you what happens when you're dealing with one modeling lamp over the other. When you put on your modeling lamp, it shows you right where your light's going to hit. And you'll see on our subject there, now we've got a shadow on the left because our light is on the right. If we switch lights, I'll turn off the right light and I'll turn on the left light. And you can see how the shadow is now coming from the other side. So it's important to note that these modeling lamps actually show you where your flash is going to hit. And that's why it's really important to have these on when you're composing and getting your subject ready. It tells you what your picture is going to look like. Okay, that being said, each head, the flash is controlled by this switch here and here on bank A and bank B. And they're marked by full, quarter, and half power notations on the switch. And it's just what they say. Quarter in the middle is a quarter power, the bottom is half, and the top is full. A quarter, and it's pretty much self-explanatory. Now, if I want to have my left head at quarter power and my right head at half power, and I fire them with my switch on ratio, that's exactly what will happen. The left side will be half as bright as the right side. If I were to switch this to combine, the pack will combine these 2 values, add them together, and divide them equally in half, so that each head will be transmitting 3/8 power, as opposed to quarter and half. It used to be called asymmetrical and symmetrical flash illumination, in that when you combine them, no matter what your power setting is on each head individually, they will be exactly the same. They'll be even. I prefer to shoot in ratio because it gives me the ability to shoot symmetrical if I have my powers even, or asymmetrical with just a quick flick of a switch. I'm not playing with this. The next step we're going to talk about briefly is the variator control. This is really important because these are gross controls. This is a one entire f-stop between a quarter and a half. So if I have my flash set at 1/4 and I want to reduce it a little bit, this variator will allow me to reduce the flash by 0.2 f-stop each click, with a total range of 2 full f-stops. So essentially I can cut quarter in half and then cut it in half again. So I'm down to 16th power. Now to show you how this works, if I have this on, let's say I have this on quarter power, and I have my variator at full, I have a full quarter power. Now if I turn my variator all the way down to where it says -1, That'll cut my power in half. Now the first time I flash it, it's going to be the same power as it was before I moved the switch. Only the second time has the lower power. And the reason for that is it's a capacitor discharge pack. So when you reduce the power, it's already built up to the charge that it was where the button was when it recharged. So when you reduce this, you have to dump the power with this button, and it will recharge to the new lower setting. When you increase it, you don't have to dump the button because it's adding to the capacitor. So remember, when you fire this, and when you want to reduce it, you take it down to the amount you want to reduce it, dump the existing charge, and let it recharge to the new lower rate. And then that way you'll be firing right. Now, this is a very, very small adjustment, 0.2 f-stop, so you'll be able to get very, very accurate control with it. Another thing right now, I've got the audio signal on. If you listen to it, you'll hear a little beep every time it tells you this is charged. The reason for that is if you're in a dark studio and you have this pack on the floor somewhere, maybe you can't see this ready light, you have an audio indicator that tells you the pack is fully charged and ready for the next flash. I like to turn this off. Now it won't make that noise anymore. There's no reason for that if you're right here doing copy stand work. You don't need to be listening to that all the time. The last thing is how we have this thing synced, the pack synced up. Right now we have a sync cable, which is the most direct mechanical way to synchronize the pack to the camera. And the switch is on sync. If I run a radio transmitter onto the camera, this pack has a radio receiver built inside of it. So I can put it on radio, and my wireless radio transmitter will transmit a signal to the pack and it will fire. If I have an infrared transmitter, I put it over to slave, and the infrared transmitter on the camera will be picked up by the infrared receiver on the pack. So there's really three ways you can sync this. We leave it on sync and use the cable. It is the most direct and easiest way to go. I'll get into light modifications, neutral density filters, and how to really work this pack when we get into photography. But I want to give you a basic rundown on just how to operate it. It's pretty simple. If you have any detailed questions, there's a really nice little book that comes with it, and it also details each one of the controls and gets into some more wordy explanations on exactly what everything does. I think that's going to be about it for the Dynalite Power Pack. Okay, we're back. This time we're going to assemble the monitor. This is a really, really big monitor. It's a 43-inch LG Ultra High Def 4K monitor. It's also really heavy, so please be careful when you take the monitor out of the box and go to assemble it. I've laid the monitor flat down on a clear, clean table because it is so heavy. The easiest way to assemble it is like the following. Here, you're going to take the upper arm and attach it to the base very simply. It has a screw on the bottom. You simply tighten it. Remember, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Okay, so now the base is connected. Now to get this to attach to the monitor itself, what we're going to do is we're going to lock it in here. It has a couple of little pegs, and let it rest down on its own weight, and the 4 holes will line up there for the screws. There's a bag with 4 screws, the Phillips head screwdriver, I'm sure you guys have done this before. It's not rocket science, but please be mindful that this monitor is exceptionally heavy, and if you're not careful, you can drop it or damage it trying to grab it. It's a big piece of equipment. It is a beautiful monitor, but it is heavy. So before I set this thing up, what I like to do is connect my cables. Now, I'm going to use a data port cable. I've included for you an extra very long data port cable in the event you want to put this somewhere else. In case you want to make a right angle for your workstation, so you've got your computer and monitor here and camera there, or your monitor here and your computer there, however, you got plenty of room. So I like to start first by connecting my data port cable, and let's see, where's the data port? It's down on the other end. Here we go. And then I'm going to connect my power cable. Now this monitor comes with a little clip where we can actually put our cables back in here and clip it. For right now, I'm going to leave that clip off because I'm not sure where I'm going to route my cables yet. But one thing I can put on is this little cover on the back. Little plastic snap-on cover. Goes in, clips in, and you're done. So now I can pick up my monitor. And flip it around and get ready to have it connected so that there we have one big old monitor. Now, if I'm going to connect this into in the back here, again, this will go into that universal plug strip. It just plugs right in. It actually is very secure. And then the data port cable will go into the back of the computer at the graphics card. That's it for the monitor. It's pretty big. Oh, the monitor comes with a remote control, which is a lot of fun. Aside from power input, it gives you basic things like brightness and volume at the touch of a button. I love the brightness control because as I like to turn the room lights down when I image, I turn my monitor down accordingly. I don't like it up really high. And rather than fiddling around with the control buttons on there, it's nice to have the remote. That's it for the LG 43-inch. We're going to set the computer up and start this thing going. Okay, we're just about ready to start everything up for the first time. We have our camera, our base, our lights, our power pack, our monitor, keyboard, mouse, and computer. The way I've got this wired up and what I recommend is that the camera remains in the on position all the time. The StackShot rail controller also is plugged into the power strip, as well as the camera, as well as the monitor. They're all plugged into this power strip. The computer, I have this computer on a battery backup supply on a different circuit so that the computer itself is always ready to be turned on. It's not going to be reliant on the plug strip. Everything else is plugged into this so that when I come in the morning, I will turn this plug strip on first, which will put power to my camera, my controller, and my monitor. Then I'll start the computer. At the end of the day, I do the other. I shut the computer down and I simply turn off this plug strip. It's a lot easier than going back and turning off each component individually. That's about it. So what we'll do is we'll turn this on. I will turn the computer on and then we'll come back and I'll show you what the desktop looks like.